I'd like to share a thinking framework that may help in understanding and making some sense of the current unprecedented global situation we find ourselves in, with this lockdown in the light of the declaration of a global pandemic due to the coronavirus strain COVID-19. I think sometimes having a method and a few bullet points and things we can actually go through can really help in determining or discriminating, I should say, between what we know, what we can claim to know, and what we just don't know. And maybe this framework will help. So I'm going to ask you to put your detective hat on, if you like, and have fun with it, really. Just be an investigator. We're trying to find the truth. We're trying to find that which corresponds to reality. That's the ultimate goal, so we can plan our actions appropriately and accordingly. The first point is to acknowledge full context. We're trying to find out the truth. We need to zoom right out and develop, if we haven't got one already, an understanding of the global situation. So we have to acknowledge facts such as governments lie to us. The mainstream media narrative is often false, and they lie to us as well. We need to acknowledge this. We need to acknowledge that we live in a world of propaganda and behavioural management, and this whole issue is very much about behavioural management and the public's perception of what's going on and what is necessary as a result, etc., etc. We also have to acknowledge the tag team of the pharmaceutical industry with government and the vested interests that they have. We have to acknowledge their track record in disregard for human health on issues such as vaccine efficacy and safety. It's a big taboo subject that no one's allowed to question the official version of. Fluoridation of water, the okaying by government of mercury amalgam fillings and so forth in dentistry, the issue of the government being slow to even react on condemning smoking, even after that was conclusively shown to cause cancer, the government's promotion of an unhealthy diet and its compliance in the promulgation of the myth that fat makes you fat and that sugar's okay. We could go on and on. The relentless push for 5G and the government's enthusiasm for increasing degree of EMF exposure, their track record of not wanting to know the truth in the face of demonstrable evidence for legitimate health concerns must be acknowledged. We must recognise that we're now being told to do things for our health and safety, for our well-being, to save human lives, which is an implicit pro-human life premise. They're claiming that, yet their track record is disregard for human life. The cancer industry, where other forms of treatment are made illegal by governments as part of this tag team with the pharmaceutical companies and the treatment companies that develop incredibly expensive drugs that are then bought by governments. You get the picture. So we have to acknowledge full context. The next point is to separate issues, and often with complex narratives and events going on, it can be difficult to separate issues. A classic case of confusion is confusing carbon dioxide with pollution, confusing the idea of a greenhouse gas with a toxic pollutant or a particulate in the air, this sort of thing. So we have to separate the issues out, and for example, with the COVID-19 thing, we've got a health issue, we've got an alleged health threat, we've got this sort of social lockdown thing going on, and the social changes we're being called to implement. We've also got the issue of economic collapse, which has been inevitable behind the scenes for some time, but that is also a consequence, and it's wrapped up and tied in with this whole scenario. So we must try and separate the issues. as best we can. We've got to acknowledge, and part of the context, we have to acknowledge the desire by the engineers of a global society, the desire for global governance, for all governments to be coordinated by a world government. And this is all well documented, but we have to reach for this full context and also ask that question, qui bono, and separate the issues. Very important. So number 3 is to check definitions. We always have to know precisely what it is we're talking about, and it's worth going away and checking all definitions. As in most government papers, there's a section defining what they mean when they use a certain word. And pandemic, viruses, epidemic, contagious. It's worth just brushing up on so that we know what we understand the messages we're hearing, and we're able to fill in the blanks in our own understanding. So checking definitions is a really fundamental one, and don't forget to do that. Number 4 is to think in fundamentals, and this is essentially recognizing cause and effect, and stopping to ask the question, what comes first here? What causes what? What relies on what? And when we see strategies such as lockdown in order to save the NHS, and you bear in mind that the consequences of this lockdown is economic collapse, then we then have to remind ourselves, well, what comes first, the economy or the health service? And of course, the facts of reality dictate that you need economic exchange and you need an economy to be functioning in order to gather the taxation required to pay for the healthcare service. So the healthcare service is a downstream effect of a happening economy. And if we were thinking in fundamentals, we can immediately identify that this lockdown strategy is definitely a cure that's worse than the disease, as it has been labelled by Donald Trump, amongst others. If we consider a brief cost-benefit analysis, we could see that the cost of toppling an economy, which has a measurable effect in loss of human life, has to be weighed against the alleged benefits of overloading a national health system. I mean, come on, what's more important? Number 5 is check assumptions. This should be an ongoing thing, an ongoing strategy in all of our thinking, is to check what are we assuming here. And the great assumption is that lockdown is the answer. The great assumption is that it has to be a priority not to overload healthcare facilities, yet sacrifice the economy. I laugh, I don't mean to make light of it, but it just seems so unbelievable when you shed some light on it, how back to front this actually is. So we have to check the assumption that what we hear in the news is true, such as this is a serious, dangerous disease, you need to take it seriously. The BBC here in the UK keep telling us how seriously we should be taking it, and in the light of information coming out of Italy that 99% of the victims and the deaths were old people with otherwise compromised immune systems, the BBC have countered by championing the youngest ever victim recently in the news. I think it was the day before yesterday, some chap in his teens. So they're very, very quick to try to lead the narrative and get you to make assumptions. And we have to be very careful when we're listening to known liars with official stories. You have to be very careful not to assume that what they're saying is true. Number 6 is check for contradictions. Contradictions don't exist in reality, okay? That's fairly obvious. You can't be hot and cold at the same time, you can't go in two directions at the same time. We all know contradictions do not exist in reality. So if we see one in across the narrative, if somebody's saying one thing and another voice is saying another, we know that something, at least one of those points, is wrong. So contradictions don't exist is a really important one. It helps us to eliminate the impossible. As you build a coherent, non-contradictory picture of what's happening, all parts of it must integrate to sing from the same hymn sheet, to paint the same picture. So obviously something that doesn't fit is effectively a contradiction. So a contradiction is a warning flag, if you like. and requiring further investigation, further questioning. Number 7 is think in principles. It's very easy to get lost just looking at concrete examples of different things and see an example of that and go, oh yes, that's that, and then an example of that, and not join the dots and see that you've actually seen a common principle. And for example, the principle of giving up freedom for security, we must identify when precedents are set, when something that's never been justified before is suddenly now, we've now opened the door into another big sphere of possibilities there. So we have to be aware when a principle is breached. And of course, more context is that we're not free, we have a degree of freedom, but this pandemic crisis is being used to usher in a considerable acceleration of our further loss of freedom. So we need to be aware of precedents being set and principles in action. Government assuming powers that no longer need an act of parliament. Emergency crises justifying unwarranted, heavy-handed changes to government policy. And number 8 is to evaluate certainty. It's a good place to start to eliminate the impossible, as Sherlock Holmes famously said. First eliminate the impossible, and then that enables us to evaluate the possible on a spectrum from unlikely, more likely, probable, towards the relatively certain. Certainty is basically a measure of how much evidence there is for any given argument. The more evidence stacks up, the stronger the degree of certainty, essentially. With evaluating certainty, I think the golden rule is to not conclude too hastily, to keep all possibilities on the table, as it were, until you get a clearer picture. But when you do conclude, when we decide that something is true effectively to ourselves and hold that as a conviction, we need to do so based on sound, rational argument. Don't rely on your feelings. That really isn't a way to know any truth. In fact, that undermines the whole concept of truth. Don't consider that you know something until the certainty factor is pretty high and that you can rationally explain. Even when we're justifying why we think something is very probable, and of course that is a key part in understanding this global picture of this pandemic and all the implications, all these political changes. We're evaluating how certain can we be, and in some respects we can't be. We have to acknowledge that. Certainty is possible in other issues, but we may not be able to be certain, but we can build up a most likely picture, and if that's our best shot, then that's what we need to go with. And you can be damn sure that that's going to be infinitely more useful than relying on official information from sources that are known to have lied. Only a fool would allow themselves to be easily persuaded by a serial liar, a known serial liar. Sounds obvious, doesn't it? But let's remind ourselves of the track record on truth of some of the agencies that we're being expected to take on trust. I hope you got some value from this collection of pointers for thinking. Keep asking questions, of course. That is the essence of thinking, asking and answering, or finding out the answer to questions. Thanks very much for listening. Do check out the website, lawfulrebel.com, and I'll see you next time.
Change you want to see.